Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. So what we're going to talk about tonight, well, of course, the farming protest, talk a little bit about the journalism surrounding it, which is pretty terrible. Other terrible journalism as well from Sky News, which seems to be going really down the toilet. The Scottish Labour Party are in a bit of a fix over the winter fuel allowance, and the police are trying to be exempt from the national insurance contribution hike. So I want to start off, of course, with the farming protest. So this is, of course, over the issue of inheritance tax, so a change to inheritance tax. So I wanted to start off immediately with an explainer video because I think this is going to formulate how we approach this issue during the night. So this is from Ben Chew from the BBC. So let's hear what he had to say.
Well, farming groups are claiming around 70,000 in total, but the Treasury estimates fewer than 500 a year. But there have been reports that the Environment Department, DEFRA, thinks the number might be higher than the Treasury's figure and has been pushing for more mitigations to protect farmers. So what's the reality on these numbers and where do they come from? Well, DEFRA's Farm Business Survey suggests between 30 and 35% of farms in the UK could be valued at over £1 million. There are about 209,000 farm holders in the UK in total, so that implies around 70,000. But all of these would not be necessarily liable for inheritance tax. Let's look at the official Treasury figures for agricultural property tax relief in the 2021-22 tax year. So this gives us a sense of the value of farmland passed between generations in that year. And there were 1,730 claims in total, and only 27% were for properties valued at above £1 million. So that suggests a maximum of around 500 farms which would have been affected by the tax change, which is the origin of the Treasury's figures. So these are the raw numbers, but there's some very important context for them. First, under the changes in the budget, people passing farms on to their descendants would still be facing a lower rate of inheritance tax than people passing on similar assets, 20% versus 40%. And this lower rate will be charged on the value above £1 million, not the total value. In addition, there are various inheritance reliefs, such as those available to married couples, which tax experts estimate could bring the effective tax-free amount for many farmers to more than £2.5 million, not £1 million. Second, some economists argue the value of the inheritance tax exemption for farms, since it was introduced in 1984 under Margaret Thatcher's government, has pushed up the average value of farmland because some wealthy people have used it specifically to avoid inheritance tax, a trend that isn't necessarily financially beneficial to ordinary working farmers. It's sparked a lot of opposition in rural communities.
Okay, so we're talking about a very small number of people. We're talking about not £1 million, but maybe 2.5 or £3 million. Thatcher again. So we're talking about a very small number of people, and it's likely people who have huge amounts of money, huge assets, and of course, as was pointed out by Ben Chew, you can see, where is it here? The rate is half the normal rate. So if you're not a farmer and you're passing on an asset worth more than £1 million, you're paying 40. Well, you know, when you take out all the exemptions and stuff, you're paying 40%. But if you're a farmer, you're paying 20%. Now, of course, this is, once again, rich people convincing poor people that poor people need to come out and protest against something that's designed to take a bit more cash away from very rich people. So let's jump into this. So this is a call that James O'Brien received from a very crazy person in relation to this topic.
Stop talking over me and let someone who actually knows speak once. And I know that's difficult for you, James.
Why are you so rude, Charlie? It's not my fault.
Rude.
It's not my fault. You've just made.
You are the rudest person on the radio because you sit there with your twiddling your knobs.
I'm the second rudest person on the radio at the moment.
I'm the second rudest person on the radio at the moment.
At this moment, Charlie.
Rude. When a farmer inherits his farm and he can't afford to pay that inheritance.
Oh, thank you so much, Ivan, for that super chat. Very kind of you. Thank you so much for that support. These specific rich farmers and landowners want to try living a life like mine, I have to go private and pay for the mental health retreatment of £250 for every appointment because of the Tories. The right-wing press and media will never manipulate me. Well said, Ivan, and thank you so much for that support. What really upset me about all of this as well is that, you have the right-wing press jumping on this. You have very rich people jumping on this. You have the Conservatives, who've been throwing farmers under a bus since Brexit or even before, jumping on this. You have Reform UK, and I'll show you in a moment, unfortunately, and people, I'll give you a warning before it happens. Nigel Farage jumping on this. And this is about, once again, convincing ordinary people that they're going to be impacted by something that's designed to impact the richest in society. So we're going to see a lot of this going forward. We're going to see a lot of these attempts to weaponize certain issues to convince the public that it's going to impact them. And I mentioned this weeks ago. Whenever GB News or Talk TV talk about inheritance tax or capital gains tax, saying that the government are going to raise, this was before the budget, they said, they're going to raise capital gains and they're going to increase inheritance tax. And this is, of course, designed to protect the richest. They don't care about the poorest, because the poorest people don't pay inheritance tax. They don't pay capital gains tax. So these right-wing outlets are there to convince ordinary people to be angry with the government for increasing a tax that doesn't affect them, but only affects the richest in society. And as Ivan has said, these rich people are well protected in so many ways. Like Jeremy Clarkson himself said back in 2021, he told the Sunday Times, I bought land in order to avoid paying inheritance tax. And now that something has changed, he's upset about that. He's a multimillionaire. He'll be okay. His children will be okay. They're not going to starve. They're not going to have to live under a bridge or live in a tent. They will be fine. Just, the fact that they have to pay a little bit more in inheritance tax is not going to see them on the street. And what is it there to do? It's designed to increase money for the public, for the state, so that they can spend this money on public services. So it's taking from the rich and, in a sense, giving to the poor. That's what it's designed to do. Whether that will happen is another thing, but that's what it's designed to do. And the rich are still angry. The people who don't need to rely on public services are angry. Jeremy Clarkson will never use a bus. Jeremy Clarkson will never need to, go on welfare. He'll never even consider universal credit. These things are designed to support, not that universal credit supports people that well, but they're supposed to be there to support people, the poorest in society. We have to tax the rich. The Labour Party should be going further with these things. Do you have libertarian positions? Is that directed me? I presume it is. I'm when it comes to, for example, personal freedoms, I'm fully in support of personal freedoms, like, for example, bodily autonomy. I'm completely against the idea of the state telling you what to do when it comes to bodily autonomy, as long as it's not impacting the lives of other people. For example, when it comes to, for example, issues like abortion or euthanasia, I'm completely libertarian on those issues. I don't know if that's what, and people will disagree with me, and they have every right to disagree with me. But on social issues, I'm generally quite libertarian, I believe. People should be free to do whatever they want. I'm an advocate for the legalization of most drugs as well. People should be allowed, as long as it's not impacting other people. Now, of course, there are deeper questions there when it comes to, is it actually impacting other people? If you get sick because you're taking a lot of drugs, and this is a drain on the state or something, these are different questions. But from a simple personal usage point of view, I'm supportive of those things. Free the weed, exactly. Anyway, let's continue with James O'Brien's call.
tax because it's hundreds of thousands of pounds and he only makes £30,000 a year.
Well, can we crunch the numbers quickly?
That's his home, James.
Can we crunch the numbers quickly?
Yeah, by all means.
So hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of tax, presuming, of course, that it's passed from spouse to spouse and then to heir. So it's in excess of £3 million. So for hundreds of thousands of pounds at a 20% tariff, regardless of what the figure is, the percentage is 20%. You'd have to be living in an estate worth sort of £6, £7, or £8 million.
No, 4.5 million, James.
No, hundreds of thousands of pounds. You said.
4.5, yeah, exactly.
So that's 1.5 million, 20% of 1.5 million over 10 years.
Yeah, and how are you going to pay that?
40% for everybody else.
How are you going to pay?
That's the point. 40% for everyone else. Like, nobody else has this benefit, and this guy is complaining.
That when you earn 25 grand a year.
The same. Well, I don't. How can you possibly be arguing, Charlie? Charlie.
My house is protected. When a farmer inherits his farm, his house is at risk.
Why don't you sell some stuff?
Like what, James?
Well, some of you, some of your land.
Who's going to buy it? Who's going to buy it?
I don't know. Lots of people are trying to buy land. We spoke to.
No, that's the funny thing.
What do you want a name?
The farmer's not going to buy it.
It's like, who's going to buy it? I don't know who's going to buy it. Surely somebody. You don't know who's going to buy it. No, I don't have a name. This is insane.
John's going to buy it. John is going to buy it.
John's going to build solar panels on it.
John, I don't know what he's going to do with it, but he's going to. But you asked me who was going to buy it, which you don't recognise. You're shouting at me again.
Panels. We've had the offers for wind farms.
Well, there you go. Then what are you?
So, this is the most frustrating thing ever. So you have a guy complaining that he's not going to be able to pay inheritance tax because he'll be forced to sell part of his land. And he's been offered money for that land, and he's saying, no, I don't want to sell that land because you're going to do with it in a way that I don't want you to deal with it. You're going to put solar panels on it, and I don't want you to do that. So I'm going to refuse to sell the land to you because you're planning to put solar panels on it. And you're complaining that this is insane. This is insane. So you're saying, I don't want to pay inheritance tax. Okay, but you have an asset that's worth over £1 million. You have to pay inheritance. Everyone else has to pay inheritance tax if their asset is worth over £1 million, or in some cases over £350,000. You have to pay an inheritance tax. Okay, well, you could sell the land. Yes, I could sell the land, but I don't want to sell the land. Why? Because somebody may use it for a thing that I don't want them to use it for. Like, what do you want from these people?
What are you complaining about?
Because we don't want to concrete over the land. I know you're a townie. I know you're happy.
Just like that's his response. You're a townie. You just want to concrete over everything. I don't want to concrete over anything. So I'm going to refuse to sell the land that could actually help me pay the inheritance tax because somebody might use it for something that I don't want.
Living in your liberal elite world of London, but for us, the countryside is the countryside. It's where our food comes from, James.
So you've been offered.
To have forgotten that.
You
seem to have forgotten that, haven't you, James?
Charlie, you
can't
don't.
accept it.
Okay, mate. I'm going to have a.
I'm not your mate. I hate you. I think you're an idiot.
Wow. That went. Don't call me mate. I hate you. He sounds like a child.
Okay.
I think you're a lefty, liberal, woke idiot.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we didn't get a definition here of woke. I'm still waiting for a coherent definition of woke. Did you hear this? Did you hear, guys, this week that there are woke sandwiches? That Generation Z has abandoned traditional sandwiches and now they're going with woke fillings for sandwiches. I'm not sure what woke is. Woke means everything and it means nothing.
Charlie,
let's tarmac the AOMBs. Let's tarmac them. Yeah, get some solar farms on there. Yeah, why not, James?
I think
hey, James, you like immigrants? You probably want to see some homes there as well, don't you?
You like immigrants. I didn't expect it to go down that road, but of course it would go down that road. So I can guarantee, I don't know this guy at all, but I can guarantee this guy voted for Brexit in 2016. I can guarantee that he voted for Boris Johnson in 2019, and he voted for Nigel Farage in 2024. I can guarantee it.
Yeah.
Well, down with homes.
When was the last time you went to a farm?
I grew up on a working farm. I probably should have mentioned that sooner. I grew up just outside Kidderminster in Worcestershire. Farmers are all around Chaddersley, Corbett and that area.
So what, your dad was a farmer?
Absolutely. No, I've explained several... Do you listen to this programme?
So when you... No, I don't.
Well, how can you have such strong...
I think you're an idiot.
How can you have such strong views about me then?
Because the few times I have listened to you, I heard how you speak to people. You talk over them and cut them off, like you've done to me.
Down with that sort of thing, Charlie?
You are down with that, I know. That's what you love.
I mean down with talking over people and shouting at them.
Oh, I'll shout at you. I'll give you everything that you try and give me.
I've tried to give you a fair hearing.
You haven't. You haven't at all.
Okay.
I pointed the facts to you and you won't accept it.
Okay.
You know nothing, James. Stick in your London liberal lefty wokeism. You know nothing about farming.
Oh my goodness, okay. And reform in July, yes. They've taken our ham sandwiches and replaced them with the wokest of fillings, chicken. Apparently chicken is too left-wing now. I was thinking tofu. Tofu would be woke. Can we think of some examples of something that would be a woke filling? Tofu, of course. What else? Lettuce. Maybe because it's anti-Liz Truss. So that's probably woke. She's a big enemy of woke. So putting lettuce in a sandwich would be pretty woke, I would imagine. That fade out was something else. he's getting louder and louder in his mind, but he's getting quieter and quieter as the fade out kicks in. Apparently, continental cheese is woke. Cress, brie and Canterbury is definitely. Corn nuggets, definitely woke. Coronated chicken is to the right. Yes, coronated chicken is anti-woke because it's made by Republican farmers in the United States. My dog's name is actually Charlie. He was thoroughly insulted by Charlie on LBC. Well, my greetings to Charlie. He's much better Charlie than this guy on LBC ever could be. And give him a pet when you see him because I love dogs. Oh my goodness. So let's move on to the next one. This is a member of the DUP, who of course the DUP have to jump on this bandwagon as well. So let's hear what she had to say about the farming protest.
How do you sum up the first few months in government from Labour? How's it been?
Disastrous. Pensioners and farmers, the backbone of our economy.
What? Look, I have no offense whatsoever to pensioners because I know there are a lot of pensioners on this channel, but pensioners are the backbone of the economy. I don't understand. How can pensioners be the backbone of the economy?
And they attack us in this way. I'm the daughter of a farmer, I'm the wife of a farmer, and I have a little boy who aspires to be a farmer. And, you know, I can...
This is not an attack on farmers. This is increasing inheritance tax in 2026. It's not even something that's going to happen now. It's in 2026. As we saw at the beginning of the stream with the report from the BBC, it's 20% for farms when it's 40% for everyone else. That's an advantage farmers have over the rest of society. And it's on values of over £1 million. But in reality, it's more like £3 million when you add in all the incentives or the discounts.
See the sense of real dread in farming families that the impact that this will have on their family business. We feed the nation. We feed 10 million people a year, and the Labour government at the...
This is somebody who campaigned for Brexit. Okay, so we have to keep coming back to this. Campaigned for Brexit, still thinks Brexit was a good idea, and now she's concerned about, feeding families.
Stroke of a pen have put our farming families in jeopardy. Well, farmers have a unique way of getting their message to the government, and I have no doubt that in the days, weeks and months ahead, that message will be heard loud and clear.
Where were these farmers during the Brexit negotiations? Where were these farmers when raw sewage was being pumped into rivers and lakes? Where were these farmers when the New Zealand and Australia trade deals were signed by the Tories? Where were these farmers when Therese Coffey said, don't worry, we're going to make sure that you're paid you're compensated for Brexit when they were not. Where were these farmers during all of these times? Suddenly now, because there's a change in the inheritance tax for the richest farmers, they're all out in their tractors and they're attempting to crash into buildings in Whitehall.
By the Labour government. And to be honest, if their belligerence continues, the ballot box will be where it will be decided, and I believe that firmly. I think it's important tonight that Northern Ireland...
Labour don't run in Northern Ireland. Why is she talking about the ballot box in Northern Ireland? Labour don't have MPs in Northern Ireland. The Conservatives don't have MPs in Northern Ireland. Reform don't have MPs in Northern Ireland, with the exception of the TUV. So I don't know what she's... Does she think this is going to help the DUP in some way? Anyway... God. Look, I'm going to cover a few of these videos and then we'll move on to something else, I promise. But this... oh my goodness. Let's just jump into this. This is insane.
Maddie, the government says that in actual fact there will be probably 75% of farms won't be at all affected. It isn't £1 million, it's more like £3 million.
Absolutely ridiculous. They do not have a clue what they're going on about.
So has your family taken tax advice on how you'll be affected?
You don't need to think to be.
Have you taken tax advice? No. Why? It's all up here. Who's given you advice? Well, Nigel Farage told us it would be bad, and the Tories told us it would be bad. So we're not actually going to think for ourselves, or we're not actually, like with Brexit, we're not actually going to ask experts, because Michael Gove said that everyone is sick of experts. So what we're going to do is we're going to absorb the negativity around this issue from the Conservatives and Nigel Farage and Jeremy Clarkson, of course, and we're going to allow them to do the thinking for us. Like, Jesus Christ, like you would think, yeah, we've spoken to an accountant. Well, she couldn't say that, because if she said we spoke to our accountant, the accountant would say, you're not really affected by this. It doesn't really affect you. So why the hell are you out protesting? I'm protesting because Nigel Farage and what's his name, Jeremy Clarkson and the Tories said it's bad.
I understand where they're coming from with this rule, but it's capped too low. You're not bothering the people that actually need to be stopped, like Dyson, let's say. They're doing it to...
Dyson is a billionaire. Are you suggesting that only billionaires should pay inheritance tax? Like it's stopped too low? £1 million? In reality, more like £2 or £3 million? Like people who have assets, you think it should be higher than £2 or £3 million? What, £5 million? It's only after £5 million of assets that you should start to pay inheritance tax.
Well, we know what they're doing it for, don't they? You're not supporting the actual farmers that are getting...
Sorry, what are they doing it for? Unfortunately, she didn't suggest, she hinted at something. I don't know what they're doing it for. What are they doing it for? Does anyone actually... this is an honest question. She's hinting at something here. Is it like communism or something that I'm missing? Jeremy was gross on TV. He definitely was. Hoovering. Why should anyone pay inheritance tax when the king doesn't? Claire Sweet has a point there. You know, the king doesn't pay. The queen, actually, the former queen, I keep calling her the queen, you know. The new one isn't the queen. But the former queen, it seemed, strong-armed Parliament to create a special rule for the royal family so that when she died, Charles wouldn't have to pay inheritance tax. And it would have been a significant amount of money. But he's still okay anyway, because he still has the Duchy of Lancaster, which is a way for the royal family or the king to make some money on the side. Like, he's paid a wage, as far as I know, but he also has these investments where he owns like the seabed and he owns property that charities are using and they have to pay rent to him. Yeah, and NHS hospitals as well. The NHS pays something like £11 million to the Duchy of Lancaster, which is the sort of bank account of the king.
doing it for, don't they? That you're not supporting the actual farmers that are getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning in the wet clothes, being paid less than minimum wage. A lot of us young people...
Then just do something else. I don't understand this argument. We hate our jobs, we don't like doing this, but we want to be compensated. Like, I fully understand the need. Like, then shouldn't you be campaigning for better wages? Or shouldn't you be campaigning for something where farming pays? I don't understand the argument she's trying to make here. She's saying, like, it's shit, but we should be compensated for it. Don't you know there are lots of people who get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, like Uber drivers, or people who do deliveries, or people who work in A&E and stuff like this. But if they have an asset worth over £1 million, they won't be able to be exempt from capital gains, in inheritance tax.
Especially, we don't get paid minimum wage because it's our belief that we get the farm.
So we don't get paid because it's our belief we'll get the farm. You still get the farm. Who's taking the farm away from you? Anyway. So here is a trigger warning for anyone who doesn't want to see frog-faced Nigel Farage. I began with a bit of sympathy for farmers because I didn't fully understand this at the very beginning of this saga. I thought, okay, this is going to impact a lot of farmers. In reality, as we've seen, it's going to impact very few farmers. And in many cases, it's not actually going to impact farmers, it's landowners. Phil from A Different Bias made a very interesting point on one of his videos today. He said the Labour Party approached this the wrong way. They should have imposed a land tax, because this would have impacted landowners, not farm. Because, you know, it would impact landowners more, people like Dyson and that, and Jeremy Clarkson perhaps. So it would impact people who have large tracts of land who don't actually farm anything, while this is impacting more farming. And farming is necessary, and nobody's saying that farming is not necessary. And, you know, in a society, we need to make sure that we have food security, and that's something that Liz Webster brings up all the time. You know, somebody who's against Brexit, Liz Webster, and she said, you know, we need to protect our food supply. We can't rely on just importing everything. You can't move land. Well said, Reagan elite. You know, you can't move it into an offshore bank account. Not yet, anyway. Maybe Jacob Rees-Mogg is working on some new technology for that, like he was saying for the land border in Ireland. So anyone who doesn't want to see Nigel Farage for the next 20 or 30 seconds, look away. Okay, I'm not going to show much more of this. So it's like trees clapping the arsonist. Like I had some sympathy for farmers, but it all disappeared when I saw this. You know, this guy who went to farmers in 2016 and told them we need to leave the European Union. If we leave the European Union, everything will be wonderful. And then they saw their subsidies taken away. They saw trade barriers put up with their market. They saw less access to workers that they need to pick fruit and vegetables. They saw a war with supermarkets over consequences of Brexit, not directly related to Brexit, but indirectly related to Brexit. And what do? They welcome him like he's some sort of hero. What is wrong with these people? Honestly, I honestly can't understand what the fuck, sorry for my language, but what the fuck is wrong with these people? This guy who's lied to you, who's thrown you under a bus or a tractor on numerous occasions, turns up and he's cheered. Like, I'm trying to think of a parallel, apart from, you know, an arsonist being cheered by the trees as he enters the forest. I've burnt down half the forest. Let me try and burn down some more. But don't worry, the trees are cheering you on. Honestly, I can't think of any better analogy than that. Farage arriving, cheered. There were pictures of him in a tractor. I'm not going to show it to you, don't worry. I honestly don't understand these people. Like, in what way do you think Nigel Farage is on your side? He's never given a crap about you before. He doesn't give a crap about you now, and he will not care about you in the future. You sure it's Farage? He doesn't look stuffed up. Trump's backside here. What's that? No, he's been extracted because, you know, he's no longer needed. Somebody else is filling that role. It seems to be Elon Musk. Elon Musk is doing Nigel Farage's old job of cleaning Donald Trump's colon. He wears tweed, so he thinks he's like them. Yes, and he has a wax jacket as well. So better cosplay for today. I'm cosplaying as a farmer today, so I'll go down there. Like, another thing is, he went there, and this is probably worse. Actually, I just thought of this as I saw it now. He went there knowing that he would not be assaulted. He went there knowing that nobody would throw a piece of cow shit at him. What does that say? I think that says more about the people than it does about Farage. Because if I lied to people and conned them and told them everything would be wonderful and then it turned out shit, I wouldn't show my face in public. I certainly wouldn't go into the lion's den. But Farage is there. Farage knew he would be welcomed. It's not like he chanced his arm and said, look, I'll try and see, maybe, you know, we can organise a few Reform UK supporters and stuff. Here, he's walking through the crowd here. Nobody threw a punch at him. Nobody threw shit on him. Nobody threw a milkshake in his face. Nobody did anything. So it says more about them than it does about Farage. So it's very hard to have sympathy for any farmer there cheering this charlatan. Honestly, it's almost like, you know, Donald Trump arriving in some Latino village or town and saying, we're about to deport all of you. And then, yay, we voted for you. Well done. Okay, get in the van now. We're taking you to Mexico. And it's basically the same thing. Okay, and just one more video on this and then we'll move on to another topic. This was a reporter from Novara Media who went down to the farming protest, and she got racially assaulted by a guy right next to Lee Anderson. And of course, Lee Anderson, being a gentleman, he stepped in and, did nothing.
I'm from Novara Media. I was just going to ask, how do you think...
I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to you. Clear up. I'm talking to some real people.
Why won't you...
Wow, do you see that? Get out of here, get out of here. Lee Anderson, an elected MP, refusing to do... He's happy to do media interviews when he wants to, but, you know, if he's asked at the wrong time, it's get out of here. I want to talk to real people. What does that mean, real people?
Communists.
Yeah?
That was what you said.
Would you like to...
call yourself a communist?
Sorry, overbreeding of my sort.
No, you're YouTube. There we go.
Overbreeding of your sort. I wonder what that meant. I can't quite put my finger on why this guy would say overbreeding of your sort. Overbreeding of your sort. What did he mean by that?
Sorry, you said overbreeding of my sort. What did you mean by that? Overbreeding of my sort, sir. You also called me an immigrant earlier.
I like you.
I did call myself a communist. Good clue. Oh, it's nice to meet you, sir. Have a lovely day.
You know, and Reform UK keeps saying, no, we're not racist, we're not bigoted, we don't attract racists and bigots. Nigel Farage has a perfect vetting system to keep out the likes of, the far right. Okay, let's take a short comedy moment, guys, and we'll be back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff. Hold on, we'll start with this. Old but good.
We go together like Rama, like a ding ding dong. My bitch forever like Shuba, your buddy ding. Come on, chang chang changity chang shabad. Your ass belongs to me. Whoa, yeah. Now Brexit's on track like dip. Do what doo-doo-doo. And in those contracts, like Scooby-Dooby-Dooby-Dooby, Shooby-Doo-Up, Shub-Up, Chang-Chang, Changity, Shab-It. Now if you're there's a fee, wah, 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 ka-ching. When I assassinate in some sovereign state, because my holding is low,
I'll back you all the way. That's the price that I must pay for selling my country down that road. Oh, 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 oh. Ram, like a ding, 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 ding.
don't shoot out, shoot out, your buddy, ding, come on.
Do what they do,
Shooby-Doo-Up, Shub-Up,
Hopefully we won't see a rerun of this anytime soon. Okay, moving on. Labour is absolutely not engaging in class war, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer insists. Oh my goodness.
Prime Minister, the Ukraine-Russia war has been raging.
Question is, although that's a small number of cases, the taxes.
No, I'll just read the article. So, Sir Keir Starmer was asked by Sky News' political editor Beth Rigby if the changes to inheritance tax and putting VAT on private schools shows the government was looking to wage a class war on wealthy people. Okay. When the Tories imposed austerity, let's ignore Brexit for a moment, but let's go to austerity. When the Tories imposed austerity meaning, of course, cuts to public services, running public services into the ground, it resulted, and there are different estimates, but we're talking about 300,000 people dying as a result of austerity. People not being able to get the benefits they need, people being cut off, people getting sick because they're not able to get the support they need, and so many other reasons. And was that class warfare? Was that class warfare where a government decides we're going to punish the poor because of mistakes made by the rich? Are we going to engage in class warfare? Well, I think it was class warfare. It was rich people deciding we're going to make poor people pay, even though poor people can't pay. Let's squeeze them a bit more. Let's cut the services that they need, services that we don't need. That was class warfare. But where was the media when that was happening? Was Beth Rigby calling out the Tories, David Cameron, Theresa May, and others? Was she challenging them over class warfare? No. No mention of class warfare whatsoever. Not that I remember. I haven't seen every single interview, but I haven't heard any mention of class warfare from the media when it was punishing poor people. And now when we talk about VAT on private school fees and a change to inheritance tax, it's suddenly class warfare. It's Keir Starmer, the socialist, the communist, coming after the poor rich people. Coming after people who have, strived. The ones who have worked their fingers to the bone to put aside just enough to pay for private school fees for their children. Yeah, 300,000. That was one estimate. Ian Duncan Smith, George Osborne, 500,000 people marching through London against austerity. Ignored. Power to the people. Ignored. Where was the media when that was happening? Does anyone remember? Does anyone remember the wall-to-wall coverage? Does anyone remember the interview after interview after interview of people about how is this going to impact, how this is a disaster? No. I don't remember. I remember a few interviews with members of the public about poverty, but there was no connection being made with austerity. Like the Tories, when they took over in 2010, their first course of action was we need to reduce the size of the state. It's too expensive. We need to cut investment. We need to cut public spending. Their idea was austerity will drive growth. And what happened? There was zero growth. It flatlined for years. And then came along Brexit. And I mentioned a lot about Brexit, but I often talk about how austerity led to Brexit because the public saw public services run into the ground, and they needed somebody to blame. And many people decided to give the government of the day, the Tories, David Cameron's administration, a bloody nose. And while Brexit was lashing out, ultimately the ordinary people were suffering the consequences of Brexit. It's understandable that people decided to reject the status quo. The status quo was telling you we need to stay in the European Union. And of course, who were these people? David Cameron and a number of Tories and rich people were saying we need to stay in the European Union. And many people said no. Many people didn't understand, of course, what they were voting for. They didn't know that it was going to harm them more than, of course, David Cameron. David Cameron is perfectly fine. David Cameron is doing pretty well for himself. He didn't suffer the consequences of austerity, and he didn't suffer the consequences of Brexit. The Prime Minister said that he's absolutely not taking part in such action. He was asked about his position as thousands of farmers protested in Westminster over the changes to inheritance tax, which Sir Keir said would only impact typical cases with estates worth more than £3 million, which is true. Alistair, thank you so much for that super chat. 400,000 austerity COVID deaths, 300,000 that the Tories killed when in power. And when it comes to the pandemic, a lot of those deaths were as a consequence of Boris Johnson's actions or inactions. Deciding, should we go into a lockdown? Well, the scientists, the experts are telling us we need to go into a lockdown straight away, but Boris Johnson was too busy looking over his shoulder at his backbenchers. Well, I don't want to upset them. A lot of them have property portfolios, and they're worried that, well, if we go into lockdown, it's going to impact their bottom line. Let's throw a few more elderly people under a bus. Let the bodies pile high, he allegedly said. And then when it came to coming out of lockdown, the Tories were doing victory laps. We are the first country out of lockdown. As if it was a great thing, as if it was the right thing. We still don't, we obviously have seen number of deaths. And what they were doing, of course, was trying to get out of lockdown when they were being told not to go out of lockdown by the experts. Drunk in charge of a country. Yes, that was Boris Johnson. Heathrow Airport wasn't locked down initially. No, they allowed people in Cheltenham. Races was fully booked up when Italy, I think, was going into lockdown on the same day. And I think there was a sort of arrogant exceptionalism within the Tories that no, it's happening to other governments. It's not going to happen to us, or we can ignore it because we'll actually have to take serious action to deal with it. Anyway, going on, Labour reintroduced the inheritance tax on agricultural properties in its budget this year, with farmers able to pass down assets tariff-free since the early 1990s. Sir Keir said such measures were necessary to raise the funds for housing, schools and other public services which are needed across the UK, including rural communities. Now, what you're going to hear a lot of from the opposition is, this isn't actually going to raise any money, so you're just punishing farmers for no reason. And of course, it's not punishing farmers, it's punishing very rich people a little bit. And if you want to rebuild public services, you need money. You need to tax somebody. Like we keep talking, the Tories don't want to increase borrowing. They say that they don't want to cut public services. So where is the money supposed to come from? Just force more people off benefits. Cut the benefits bill. That's their solution to everything. Punish people who are on benefits. Force people off benefits into jobs that they can't do. That's the Tory response to every, work shall set you free sort of thing. Honestly, if you inherit a farm and sell it within 7 years, you should have to pay 40% above 325,000 like the rest of us. But instead, they get 20% over 1 million or 3 million. Stop the yachts. Well said, Suzanne. Yeah, it's like, how can people... Why is nobody talking about this 20%? Why are farmers on 20% and everyone else is on 40%? Anyway, moving on. Home Secretary reveals police forces to be compensated for national insurance rise. So police forces will be compensated for the rise in employers' national insurance, the Home Secretary has revealed. Yvette Cooper told the policing conference the Treasury has said it will ensure police forces will not lose out as a result of changes in employers' contributions brought in as part of last month's budget. Now, I don't want to pick sides here, and I don't want this to seem that I am picking sides, but I was listening to Murphy, what's his name? Murphy, The Economist, Richard Murphy. I was listening to Richard Murphy, and he said that a big problem with this change to national insurance contributions is that it's possible that, okay, it's not going to affect employees directly, but what it could do is it could create a problem for the public service. So, for example, the education. Now, we're seeing here that police forces may be compensated, but, for example, education may not be compensated or not exempt from this rise in national insurance. So, teachers who are paying national insurance, their national insurance will not increase, but the Department of Education, which employs the teachers, will have to pay more. Now, that would mean their budget will have to increase to compensate for that rise in national insurance. If it doesn't, then that would be a problem because the education budget will have to be cut in some way to cover this extra cost. That will mean fewer teachers and cuts to other aspects of that department of education, which could be a problem. What's with the caps? Is it me? I got this as a gift, a very important gift. A very kind gift from a member of the channel. Trump owns 1,400 acres in Scotland golf course. A land tax would definitely better, or mansion tax. Yeah, I don't know if Scotland has the power to introduce former caps, Max. Okay. Farmers caps. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. It maybe keeps your head warm during the day if you're out and about. It also regulates the temperature. So, if you're getting in and out of a tractor, the tractor will be warm, the outside will be cold. You don't want this change in temperature all the time. Anyway, sometimes I read the comments and I'm like, maybe that's directed at me, but in reality it's not. I don't know if it's possible for the Scottish government to introduce a land tax. That would be interesting. You could tax the hell out of Donald Trump, compensate for some of the damage he's done. Farmers cap hide the baldness and wrinkles. Good idea. Okay, moving on. And on the issue of Scotland, I just want to cover this story. Scottish Labour pledged to reverse Starmer's winter fuel cut if they take over in Holyrood. So, if you don't know, the Scottish government, so in Scotland, powers are devolved to the Scottish government. Now, the Scottish government is, of course, not the Labour government. It's not a Labour government. It's an SNP government. And there's a bit of conflict between Scottish Labour and Westminster Labour. So Westminster Labour, of course, is the bigger one. It's the English Labour, and they call the shots. But Scottish Labour I know my friends from the SNP will disagree with this, but Scottish Labour suggests that they are somewhat independent, that they operate on a different wavelength to Westminster. They will say, look, Westminster has its way of doing things, but we are somewhat independent. We are independent, they will say. Not independent with a capital I, of course. They're not for an independent Scotland, but they're for an independent Scottish Labour. But the problem with that is the MPs in Scotland, of course, are Westminster MPs, and the members of the Scottish Parliament for Labour, well, they can't go against Labour policies in Westminster from the party, okay, because it's a UK party, because they would be, define the whip within the party or something. So they have to tread this sort of strange line of, okay, we have to show that we're independent, because we're going to be attacked by parties in Scotland, but we can't go too independent because then we're going to be, the hammer is going to come down from Westminster. Max, only income tax, all other taxes are reserved. So thanks for that information, Alistair. So the Scottish government can't introduce a tax on land because it doesn't have the power to do that. What about councils? Could councils do that? Maybe, probably not. Send trusts round to pensioners' homes to waffle about our fantasies. Forget heating. They might have to get air conditioning. But slow down, Liz. I'm melting here. Well said, Brad. Thanks for that. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh yes. So Scottish Labour have promised to go against the National Party and introduce a winter fuel payment for pensioners. Shortly after winning the UK's UK-wide general election, Sir Keir Starmer and Chancellor Rachel Reeves announced the winter fuel payment would now be means tested. Instead of every pensioner receiving £300, only those entitled to certain benefits will get the stipend. Though it will be around 1.3 million households compared to 7.6 million before. They did this to save money and fill the £22 billion black hole in the public finances they claim the Conservatives left behind. Before this announcement was made, the plan in Scotland, where benefits are devolved, was to replace the payment with a like-for-like scheme. However, the SNP-run Scottish government has since said it needs it needs to means test the new programme as a consequence of the UK's policies. Because they said, look, we have less money now, so we have to means test it. With the Scottish Labour aiming to take control of Holyrood at the 2026 election, the party is now pledging to go against the policies set by its own UK-wide government, which is a bit strange. So the policy is good or bad in the opinion of Scottish Labour? Because they're now against it, because I believe they were for it when it was being introduced by the government in Westminster. But now they're saying, no, we're against it. Which is it? Do you think it's bad for England but good for Scotland to maintain this? Are they doing it because the Scottish government, the SNP government, is doing this? Is that why they're against it? Anna Stanmore, the leader of Labour in Scotland, says universal payments for pensioners will be introduced if he takes over, although they will eventually be tapered so that those with the money to pay don't get subsidised by the taxpayer. He also claims that the extra money will be made available to the SNP for winter payment, but was not used. Really? Scottish Labour government will reinstate the winter fuel payment for pensioners in Scotland. The winter fuel payment is supposed to be a devolved benefit this year, and there will be additional resources available to the Scottish government through the Household Support Fund. That means that we could have taken a different approach in Scotland to support more households this year. Instead, the SNP decided to hand the power back to the DWP. He added that that's why Scottish Labour will take back this devolved power from the DWP, reinstate the winter fuel payment, and deliver a fairer system to ensure that everyone who needs support gets it. The UK Labour government is clearing up the mess left by the... Okay, blah, blah, blah. Swalwar is a liar, liar, pants on fire. The winter fuel allowance was devolved at the end of September. Labour made the policy at the beginning before Scotland lost the Barnett consequential. From that, they lost £1.6 billion through it. So thanks to Killer for clarifying that. So the winter fuel allowance was devolved at the end of September, but then the budget came in. They made the policy at the beginning, therefore Scotland lost the Barnett consequential. From that, they lost 1.6 billion through it. So it seems that the Scottish government were swindled in a sense out of this extra money, so they had to go ahead and reinstate it. I can't get over how the human race got so fucked up so quickly. It's bloody depressing. I don't mean to be depressing, but it sometimes sees, like, we look at, okay, hopefully things will get better next year, and it's like, okay, hopefully 2025 will be better than 2024. And then we said at the end of 2023, hopefully 2024 will be better than 2023. Now, when it comes to the Scottish government, they could, if Labour get into power in Scotland, they could reintroduce this, but will they? You know, once again, it comes up to this point of, okay, but I imagine at the next Barnett Consequential, will this money be re-available to Scotland? Like, is the Barnett Consequential every year, or is it just every 4 years or every 5 years? Northern Ireland, they were talking about borrowing the money to pay to the pensioners. Well, the pensioners are going up than the fuel payment amount. And the Belfast Child sings again. Remember that song in it? Yes, I do. Very good song. Simple Minds. Okay, children's homes. I just want to cover one final story before we finish for tonight, guys. Children's homes charging £15,000 a week per child. What the hell is this? Some private children's homes are profiteering by charging local authorities more than £15,000 a week to look after one child, a council boss has said. Halton Council said the lack of foster places and other suitable provision has forced it to place more children in private providers at huge expense. And here we have the crux of the problem when the Tories are in power. The Tories want more money going to the private sector. So what they do is they stop councils from having enough money to provide public services. So councils have to rely on the private sector. Here's a perfect example of children, needing foster care, going to the private sector at a huge cost to the council, to the taxpayer, the ratepayer. But for example, when it comes to education or healthcare, the Tories' response is the same. Let's underfund the public one so more people rely on the private one. A Children and Young People and Families Policy and Performance Board report said the age of those being placed in care was also becoming younger. The council's chief executive said local authorities were being put at the were being put absolutely at the mercy of the private sector operators, which meant prices were absolutely skyrocketing because they have nowhere else to go. We don't have places available. We have to rely on the private sector, and we have to pay through the nose because the private sector is, in a sense, a monopoly. They can charge what they want. The report said the situation in Halton was reflected nationally, with government watchdog Ofsted also raising concerns. It identified 3 cases of homes charging in excess of £15,000 a week for single children. £15,000 a week. And then we wonder why councils are going bankrupt. It said, and councils are very limited in what they can do. If they want to increase, the Tories brought in this new measure that if councils want to increase council tax by a significant amount, they have to have a referendum. And what do you think most people would vote for? Okay, the amount of money. So councils receive money through council tax. They receive money through central government, and they can sell assets. These are different ways that they can raise finance. I think there's another way, but that I've forgotten. But what's happened since the Tories were in power is the amount of money going from central government to councils has pretty much dried up. So councils have had to rely on increasing funding from through taxation, so through council tax. But there's a huge problem for councils at the moment. They're responsible for social care. And social care is becoming really, really expensive. Let me guess, all these children all these children has a father called Boris. It's possible, you know. We're all we're all related to Boris Johnson in some way. We're all like, what was it, Kevin Bacon? You know, 5 steps away from Kevin Bacon. It's more like 3 steps away from Boris Johnson. We all know somebody who's related to Boris Johnson in some way. You know, he gets about. I call him the Boris. I call Boris Johnson the Robert Baratheon of Westminster. Sorry, I'm late. Been getting people lined up for the Sunday roast. Oh, do check out the Sunday roast. Even though I'm not on it anymore, do check it out. It's a great show. It's doing pretty well at the moment. I hope to appear in some of the future episodes as a guest. Thanks so much, Peter. Yes, we can't do a live stream without Boris Johnson, can we? 2 steps, 2 steps from insanity. Karen Osborne also cut central government grants in half, reducing council budgets by 30 to 50%. That's why they're struggling. Reverse the cuts and level up the country. Yes. What needs to happen is councils need to be given more powers and they need to be given more money. The work cut out for Labour over the next decade is pretty difficult. And I've said this before, the Tories destroyed the country in 14 years, but it's going to take a lot more than that to rebuild public services. Spat for the Sperminator. You know, there should be a t-shirt with something like that on it. I think Clog has come up with a wonderful a wonderful piece of merchandise. Oh, guys, so we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on. Thank you so much for your super chats, especially Ivan, who sent that massive one earlier on, and everyone else. Thank you so much for your support. Have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday, same bat time, same bat channel. But of course, before we go, we have our one for the road. This one here. This is a bit long, but I hope you enjoy it.
And welcome back to Broken News, where it's time to get to the nub of things. Our weekly catch-up with senior correspondent Smithers Nubb. Thank you for being with us, Smithers.
Good evening, Stephen.
And I suppose there's just one story on everybody's mind at the moment. It's been going on for some time now, and it seems unlikely that it's going anywhere.
No, indeed. And there does seem to be a complete lack of international will to address it. As many as 28 legally binding UN Security Council resolutions have been broken so far, yet the UN seems unable or unwilling to take action on what the UN itself has called Israel's continuing genocide.
Wait, Smithers. I was, sorry to interrupt, in fact, though, talking about Sir Keir Starmer receiving free tickets and then meeting Taylor Swift. It's the story that just won't die.
Is it? Yes, of course, Stephen, and many up in arms about the PM getting tickets to a music concert, apparently. People not stopping talking about that one. But no new details since the last time we reported it.
Perhaps then we should move on, Smithers, because, big news out of the Lake District recently.
Yes, Stephen. An eye-opening story, this one.
Yes.
The Lake District, of course, one of the, if not the most beautiful part of the country.
Yep.
Imagine this, if you will, a nice warm summer's day. You
lovely.
decide to go for a dip with your brother in the cool waters. Nice. And as you get in, bobbing about together, those crystal clear waters turn out to be nothing but human effluents.
No, what?
Because more than 140 million litres of sewage, it's been revealed, have been illegally pumped into Windermere over the course of 3 years. United Utilities failed to report any of it. One of the most beautiful lakes in the country being used as an open sewer.
Smithers, sorry, I was referring to Kate Middleton's brother James, sharing lovely memories of him and her going on holiday in the lakes when they were younger. She was very competitive, apparently.
Was she? Great. Was there any more to that story? Or?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, to hear about the Princess of Wales's early life?
Not particularly.
Well, perhaps then time for one more story, Smithers. And, well, in my lifetime, I never thought I would see a German rise to power in such a way.
Yes, and I'm glad that we are covering it here on Broken News. The AfD, or Alternative for Deutschland, are on the rise in Germany. Of all countries, for a populist far-right party to take hold.
Sorry, Smithers, I was talking about the New England manager.
Oh, fuck off! Sorry, do I get to report on any actual news? I was under the impression that I was a journalist, that you're a journalist, that we're all journalists. Yeah? And we report on stories that mean something to people, that affect the world. Not this confected arse gravy about Taylor sodding Swift.
Well, I think that...
It's only because morons like you keep perpetuating it that Keir Starmer can't seem to...
shake it off.
Shut up! The world is descending into chaos. Economic, societal, environmental collapse, social decay, grotesque inequality, mass poverty. An industrial war machine that grinds ever on, funding both sides and making obscene amounts of money from fueling perpetual war and creating untold misery. Well, we have to watch TikToks of innocent people getting their limbs blown off or burning alive, uncensored by social media giants who coin it in by destroying the mental well-being of us and our children. Meanwhile, the food industry pumps out low-cost, mass-produced, ultra-processed, chemically treated bullshit, destroying our health and making us rely on a pharmaceutical industry that doesn't care if we live or die, that then makes trillions from what will most likely end up being government-mandated obesity drugs.
Well, thank you.
Private train companies that can't run trains, private water companies that fill our rivers and seas with piss and shit, political leaders bought and paid for, continuing the status quo, and consumed by loyalty to profit, unable or unwilling to take the necessary action to hold society together as communities die off and the environment falls apart.
Well,
and governments can't find money for school lunches, but they'll bail out the sodding banks, and the ultra-rich dick around in space in cock rockets, while you and I can't get a sodding doctor's appointment.
Well,
more billionaires than ever before, controlling the media and making you blame the poor souls escaping the jaws of the military-industrial complex or obsessing over which bloody toilets we use, while your nana freezes to death in a one-bedroom flat. The whole thing is a system built to exploit people and the planet in the relentless pursuit of profit. And the other day, your top story was some prick allegedly fingering a bird on Strictly Come Fucking Dancing.
Oh, fingering?
Reports confirmed that she is in fact a total bitch.
Oh my goodness. It was long, but it was worth it. So guys, have a great week and I'll see you on Friday. Same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe, take care and good night.